Every day, your ego is steering the ship, convincing you that you need to react, protect, and defend yourself. Constantly. It whispers in your ear that it's yourself you're fighting for, but here's the truth. Those reactions are exactly what keep you stuck in a cycle of stress, confusion, and dissatisfaction. So why do you keep listening to it? What if the key to breaking free from this endless loop is not fighting back, but letting go? If you're tired of feeling trapped by your own mind, it's time to face the hard truth. Everything your ego tells you is a lie. Are you ready to confront it, or will you stay chained to the illusion? If you're truly committed to your personal growth, now's the perfect moment to take action. Subscribe to our channel Motivation Basics and like this video if you're committed to improve every day. Don't keep this to yourself and share it with someone who's ready to break through their own barriers today. Let's stop talking and start doing this together. In Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, he speaks of the importance of recognizing the voice in our head, the ego, as something separate from our true self. The mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. The ego, Tolle argues, thrives on conflict and reaction, feeding off the energy of negative emotions, and often pulling us into an endless cycle of defensiveness, dissatisfaction, and struggle. The truth is, when you respond from ego, you're simply perpetuating this cycle. Here we are, since you turned off your cell phone. How is your state of mind? The fact that it's more than simply a mental nudge makes it more challenging. It has evolved into much more than a mere voice throughout the ages. Emotions fuel and amplify what has become a kind of being, not really real, but appearing real enough when you conflate your own identity with the talking and reacting creature in your head. What the entity thinks generates its feelings, and the energy of those emotions serves to amplify the entity even more. How powerful that differs from one individual to the next. As Tolle points out, the ego is no more than a thought, a concept, a mental image of yourself, which is a construct of the past. The ego's existence is entirely dependent on the past, on its memories, grievances, and judgments. It is a reactionary force that projects itself into the present moment, turning everyday situations into arenas of conflict. You become entangled in its narrative of me against the world, and instead of experiencing life as it is, you see it through the lens of your own personal drama. The entity could be seen as a facet of karma in a sense. A person's internal hereditary tendencies that they mistake for their own identity are what the Eastern concept of karma refers to. These patterns are recognized by consciousness. In some people, it manifests as a weighty, dramatic, angry, or melancholy creature that is quick to anger, vigilant for any perceived wrong or injury, and prepared to leap to its defense at the first sign of trouble. As you can see on TV or in real life, even challenging someone's perspective can trigger strong defensiveness or even violence. Because having a civil conversation about anything means detaching yourself from that imaginary being, it's really not feasible to have a calm conversation with that creature. You and the other individual have some distance between you. Firstly, within you. That is the most important aspect. The point isn't to force the other person to create room for you. Rather, it's to ensure that you have room to breathe while conversing. In Tolle's teaching, the ego is the source of suffering because it holds tightly to its sense of separation, always seeking to be validated and defended. When you are present, you can allow the thought to pass without identifying with it, without becoming it. In other words, to disidentify from the ego means to stop reacting to every challenge or trigger with the energy of the past. It means learning to breathe and create space in moments of tension. When you let go of the need to protect your ego and its stories, a sense of calm and clarity begins to emerge. The other person's anger will make more sense if you observe it growing, Immediately assimilation into a mental stance. My ego. The creature reacts aggressively, barking in response to your approach. While it does happen in people, it also happens in certain dogs. A vicious dog's history is the sole reason for its vicious behavior. There is goodness in every dog, despite its nasty exterior. You or that other person's true nature lies beneath the sanity, defying exterior of the egoic entity. The key to awakening from the grip of the ego is to observe, not react. Tolle often talks about the importance of being a witness to the mind. The moment you become aware of the ego in you, it is no longer in control of you. Becoming the observer of your thoughts, rather than identifying with them, allows you to see the ego's tricks. It stops being something that defines you and becomes something you can simply witness as it arises. By recognizing the ego's defensive reactions as not you, but a habitual pattern of mind, you begin to loosen its grip. Being an impartial spectator or witness of your own mind is your duty whenever you are presented with these creatures, which you are constantly. Sometimes your own still takes over. Maybe one or two of you still experience it periodically. When that happens, the egoic being can't control you anymore. A person's ego can be defined as their state of mind when they are not paying attention to anything anymore. Put another way, the state could be described as dreamy or unenthusiastic, as there is simply mind. When you're in this state, your life unfolds according to your dreams. As soon as they step foot on this planet, every individual is met with a unique set of circumstances. Misfortunes befall you. You respond. Without cognizance, the being responds. Its aggressive and defensive training dictates its reactions, leaving it defenseless against its environment. Its own condition is maintained. The ego thrives on its ability to attach itself to things, people, and situations, turning every event into a personal narrative. This is why, as Tolle teaches, it is so important to break free from the tyranny of the ego's perception. The ego says, I am the thinker, I am the doer, I am the feeler, I am the feeler, I am the one who reacts to things, I am the one who feels attacked or insulted. This creates endless conflict, because it convinces us that we are separate from others and that every encounter is a potential threat. Instead of responding with clarity, we react, spiraling into defensiveness or attack. An incident that, to someone who is largely ego-free, at least in that domain, does not warrant much attention. As an example, if someone doesn't respond to your email, you can assume that they are too busy or don't even read it. It's worth noting that the other individual ignored my 3 separate letters despite my repeated requests for a response. This is how it all starts, and it grows into his terrible character. The entity fortifies itself when you shift your attention to other matters. This responsiveness causes it to develop and inflate itself. Tolle reminds us that life is happening right now, not in the stories the ego tells us. The more we cling to these narratives, these defenses against reality, the more we miss the opportunity to simply be present with what is. When you lose touch with your inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose touch with the world. This deep disconnection from ourselves through the ego's constant chatter leads us to miss out on the peace and clarity that are always available in the present moment. It's easy to become consumed by the external world, reacting to each incident as though it were a personal attack. Take, for example, a situation at work. Imagine someone takes credit for your idea in a meeting. The instinct is to jump into defense mode, to demand recognition or confront them about the theft. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused, acknowledging the ego's instinctual need for validation can shift your response? Rather than getting tangled in the narrative of, they wronged me, you can step back and recognize that this is simply a moment, fleeting and inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Responding without attachment to the outcome allows you to break free from the trap of the ego's defensiveness and opens the door to clarity. Tolle explains in his teachings, the past has no power over the present moment. When we hold on to the past, whether it's past slights, past traumas, or past validations, we allow it to shape our present interactions. Letting go of these attachments allows us to be fully present, not only to the moment, but also to others. When you learn to detach from the need for validation and simply act from your true self, you find that your responses are less emotional and more aligned with your highest intentions. And small matter. This being gives each event a unique flavor. Everything has to do with me. They're attempting to harm me. He disregards me, and he has no right to do so. Thus, it develops. Subsequently, the emails escalate into furious accusations or phone conversations. "I'll get you" is the way it develops. However, it does occur, albeit in more extreme forms. It makes no difference how big it gets. What matters is that someone's lack of response becomes something terrible occurring to me. This may take up a significant portion of your time. Someone other might just state, "Oh, that's how it is." Some folks told me I should send Deepak Chopra a copy of The Power of Now when it was first published. I did it in the hopes that he would read it. There were only 3,000 printed copies, and they had to be transported to bookstores in a plastic bag by carriage. I gave it to him in writing, but he never received it. It vanished into thin air. I can finally see the reasoning behind individuals sending books to me. No amount of time could be spent reading all of the books and manuscripts. This is a perfect example of how egoic reactions are formed. The frustration of not receiving a response can easily spiral into resentment, turning a simple situation into an emotional drama. But Tolle would suggest that this reaction is entirely unnecessary. Whenever you feel superior or inferior to anyone, that's the ego in you. It's in these moments of frustration, of believing you've been wronged, that the ego thrives. But what if, instead of reacting, you simply let the situation go, recognizing that the response or lack thereof has no bearing on your true worth? Thankfully, though, that being was no longer running my inner self. Since Deepak had not responded, it was not grounds for complaint. You know what? It was as simple as that. Perhaps he read it but didn't enjoy it, or perhaps he didn't read it, or perhaps he didn't read it at all. Either way, he's probably rather busy. Soon as I make an interpretation, I'm engaging in projection. So trying to make sense of what you don't understand is a waste of time. It's merely the fact that it is. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle highlights that true peace arises when we stop interpreting and reacting to the external world through the lens of ego. When you let go of the need for validation, you open yourself up to something far more fulfilling. The experience of the present moment, where life is unfolding just as it should. The ego may demand validation, but your true self finds peace and freedom simply by being. Now think about the daily interactions with your loved ones. Whether it's a partner, a friend, or a family member, it's easy to let small misunderstandings escalate into bigger arguments because the ego feels threatened. For instance, if a partner forgets to pick up the groceries, the initial impulse might be frustration. But in that moment, the ego wants to project a story. They don't care about me, or they're disrespecting me. These interpretations are not reality. They are merely projections of your ego's desires. When you recognize this and decide not to act on those impulses, you start to create a space where genuine connection can occur. Instead of reacting with anger, you can approach the situation with understanding, asking questions or sharing your feelings in a calm, thoughtful manner. The difference is profound. Your awareness brings a shift from a reactive, painful cycle to a conscious, loving exchange. Eckhart Tolle, in his transformative book, The Power of Now, teaches us that the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. The ego thrives on creating narratives that inflate or distort our perceptions, and in doing so, it sabotages the connection we might otherwise have with others. The first step to breaking free from this cycle is awareness. By recognizing these egoic reactions as they arise, you are in the perfect position to step out of the unconscious patterns that perpetuate conflict. Actually, he probably didn't even notice it because he gets so many. Later on, though, when Path of Now was really taking off, he did pen an endorsement. That was lovely, but it was unnecessary. To make matters worse, I could have emailed him 20 times in a furious attempt to get a response, but to no avail. If you had told me up front whether I was Hitler or not, etc., I doubt he would have given his stamp of approval. Next steps are dictated by your response. The idea that your reaction dictates your path in life is echoed by Eckhart Tolle in his book A New Earth, where he explains that life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. The experience of reacting out of ego, whether that be frustration, anger, or a need for validation, becomes a tool for your spiritual growth if you choose to view it as such. By learning to detach from these knee-jerk emotional responses, you open the door to a more conscious, fulfilling way of navigating your reality. If your reaction is purely self-centered, it dictates not just how events play out in the here and now, but also how they will play out in the future. The external world reflects the ego's internal state. Therefore, be careful when reacting aggressively, negatively, demandingly, or complainingly. Like sorting out a certain sound by yelling it into the world, you'll hear it reverberate. That is to say, the energy you expend, in the form of your words and deeds, will eventually return to you. People respond to your reactions for a variety of reasons, including their egos and the fact that they aren't completely enlightened. Otherwise, they wouldn't. A chain reaction of reactions is set in motion when you respond to their reactions, is set in motion when you respond to their reactions. This is the progression of the drama, and it's all seen as genuine. Neither you nor the creature is aware that it is the one crafting the narrative. The only thing it's reflecting back to you is the external world's indoctrination, which it has internalized. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle says, "The moment you become aware of the ego, it begins to lose its grip on you. When you observe your reactions from a place of awareness, you detach from the narrative your ego is trying to write. Challenge lies in realizing that your ego is often the one pulling the strings, clouding your judgment and fueling unnecessary conflict. Once you recognize this, the cycle of emotional reactivity becomes easier to interrupt, allowing for a more peaceful and centered response. Naturally, that then provides a strong indication that your original understanding of what happened was completely accurate. Since you pointed out, you see his original intention was to deceive me, I was able to prove your point and confront him, which caused him to get enraged. It's really rough. You can understand the pointlessness of arguing with an egocentric entity or with a person if you've ever done it. It just won't happen. This self-centered thing will not listen to you since it knows it is deluded. Well, that's clear. No, you just make it stronger. Fighting the ego is hilarious in the end, but it's a ridiculous endeavor in and of itself. You can't help but be enticed by its unwavering victory. The moment you begin to dispute with your ego, you become mired in your own thought processes. Eckhart Tolle's insight into the futility of the ego's endless need to defend itself comes from his observation that the more you are identified with the ego, the more it will react, and the more it will react, and the more easily you will be drawn into unconscious patterns of behavior. Arguing with someone who is entrenched in their egoic consciousness is often a fruitless endeavor because the ego cannot listen. It can only defend, attack, or retreat. The more you engage with it, the stronger it becomes, not just in the other person, but within yourself as well. People sometimes argue that karma is what happens to you, but what really matters is your reaction to those events. This is a part of karma, for the simple reason that it is the foundation upon which your life is built and the means by which your conditioning is maintained. How other people perceive you and interact with you are both shaped by this. Amazing. The pointlessness of reacting egotistically is something I see all the time. It's like bursting a gigantic soap bubble over nothing, then harping on it for days until reality proves you were right. It's a real snare. The concept of karma is more nuanced than just events happening to you. In A New Earth, Tolle emphasizes what you react to, you reinforce. Karma isn't merely about external events, but about the internal reactions that they trigger. By reacting with anger or defensiveness, you perpetuate the cycle of karma. In contrast, by choosing conscious awareness in the face of provocation, you break the cycle and transcend the ego's grip on your reactions. This is how we can rewrite our future through awareness and consciousness, not by reacting out of habit or conditioning. Since the emotional component of the ego makes up a significant portion of it, the denser the egoic entity in you, the heavier it is. The pain body represents the ego's emotional side. In reality, the egoic entity's emotional side is the pain body. Ego density is subjective and differs from one individual to the next. Tolle beautifully describes the pain body in The Power of Now as an accumulation of old emotional pain, which almost all of us carry in one form or another. This pain body is a manifestation of the ego's attachment to past wounds and grievances. As it gets triggered, it seeks to perpetuate itself by drawing you into emotional reactions. Recognizing when the pain body is active is crucial because, as Tolle suggests, when you are in the grip of the pain body, you are no longer yourself. The ego and the pain body are inseparable, and the more you identify with them, the more you remain locked in patterns of suffering. The real challenge is in recognizing how often the ego hides in plain sight. It can be as subtle as the discomfort you feel when someone disagrees with your opinion. In casual conversations, you might notice yourself subtly pushing your views, not to share or connect, but to assert your importance. This is the ego at work, quietly manipulating interactions to serve its need for recognition. But awareness is the key. When you catch yourself in these moments, you have the power to redirect your energy. Instead of needing to be right or heard, you can listen fully to the other person, seeing them as equals, not as opponents. This shift in perspective can transform ordinary interactions into opportunities for growth and connection, where your true self, not the ego, shines through. Eckhart Tolle shares a key insight in A New Earth that ties directly to this. The ego wants to be recognized as the unique self, and this need creates a great deal of friction between individuals. The more you identify with the ego's need for recognition, the more friction you create with others. When you stop seeking validation from external sources and instead cultivate inner peace and stillness, your relationships transform. Listening fully, without the need to be right, allows for a deeper connection, free from the ego's interference. Let's bring it to the streets, where egos are often laid bare in traffic. A person cuts you off, and your heart rate spikes. Anger flares, and your first impulse is to react, to retaliate. But consider this. The person who cut you off may not even be aware of their behavior, and their reaction to your anger will only fuel the cycle. On the other hand, if you detach from the situation, you'll notice that your response is the only thing you can control. Power is in your hands to break the cycle, to let go of the need to be right or justified, and choose peace instead of conflict. By choosing not to react, you shift the narrative. Instead of an endless loop of ego-driven responses, you create a moment of stillness, of awakening to the present. In The Power of Now, Tolle writes, you do not have to be the slave of your thoughts. You can choose to be the awareness behind the thoughts. In the moment of conflict, the key is to recognize that you are not your thoughts or your reactions. You are the awareness observing them. This awareness creates space, allowing you to choose a different response, one that reflects your true nature rather than the ego's impulses. Thousands of people are online at once, so it's safe to assume that no one is listening to this from either location. However, this is the wormhole of the camera, through which the words are reaching out. So there must be someone on the other end with an extraordinarily thick ego. If that's the case, they won't hang around for long, or else they'd turn off this eco-friendly device. How terrible! Hearing oneself praised is the one thing that the ego despises the most. Tolle reminds us in A New Earth that the ego cannot survive without identification with a story. Whether it's a story of praise or criticism, the ego depends on narratives to define itself. In this digital age, where every comment or interaction can feed or challenge the ego, it's crucial to be aware of the ego's influence. When we detach from these external validations, we free ourselves from the cycle of seeking approval and defending against criticism. Instead, we embrace our true selves, grounded in presence, not the fluctuations of egoic thought. This severe density of ego and pain body is probably not present in you, yet you nevertheless come across many people with it in your day-to-day interactions. Naturally, those individuals bring misery onto themselves and others. That's why they're here. They have reached that point in their evolutionary process. Their role is that of spiritual guides. They will be awakened when they recognize that the misery they are experiencing is something they have produced. However, it may be some time before they come to that realization. While you wait, they may try to bring you pain. Simultaneously, they accompany you, and as a result, they educate you by drawing you into your egoic unconsciousness or compelling you into more intense presence. Eckhart Tolle teaches us that everyone you meet is a reflection of you. Those individuals you encounter with dense egos who seem to bring conflict into your life are mirrors of your own unresolved issues. When you see them as teachers, guiding you toward deeper presence, you can begin to shift your perception. They are not obstacles but opportunities for growth, pushing you to expand your consciousness and free yourself from the grip of the ego. To bring this full circle, it's important to remember that the journey is one of awareness and self-realization. The ego, while seemingly omnipresent and powerful, is not the ultimate truth of who we are, simply a collection of habits, reactions, and projections that cloud our perception. As we learn to detach, to step back, and to observe, we reclaim our true nature. Reclaim our true nature, from the endless cycle of ego-driven conflict. Each moment is an opportunity to choose presence over reaction, stillness over noise, and clarity over confusion. It's not easy. But the more we practice, the more the true self emerges. And in doing so, we awaken not only ourselves, but also those around us, subtly guiding them toward a deeper understanding. This is the role of both the ego Gs and the ones who choose to rise above. In the end, it's not about avoiding the ego entirely, but about understanding it, seeing through its illusion, and responding with consciousness. The more we can do this, the more we live in alignment with our higher selves, and the more we can contribute to the collective awakening of humanity. And so, the cycle continues, until all of us can finally recognize that beneath the layers of ego, there is only love, connection, and truth. Stop wasting time and make every moment count in your life. Subscribe to Motivation Basics for daily motivational videos on personal growth. Show your commitment by liking the video and commenting the word GROW. Be sure to share it with someone who needs to slow down in life. We're in this together.